Hello, sweet friends, and welcome back to Silverhawk Farm. If you don't know me, my name is Bree, and together with my husband and 2 sons, I'm working to turn our 4 acres into a thriving regenerative farm. I am so excited to be in the garden today. It is like 68 degrees. It is unseasonably warm for February, and I decided to take advantage of the wonderful weather and get some garden cleaning done, which we have an excessive amount to do. I tend to be so tired at the end of the season that I don't get my old plants out before it gets cold. So this is usually an early spring thing for me. So I still need to pull out my tomatoes, my peppers, all the things that lasted until our last frost are still hanging out on the trellises back here. So I'm going to be pulling a lot of plants. I'm going to be pulling any of the weeds that have started to come up as we've had some warmer weather the last few weeks. And I'm going to be probably removing some of these green tie-ups that I use on the trellises, though that's such an easy and obvious thing to do that I'm thinking about saving that for my oldest son to do for a chore, because I think he might actually enjoy that. We are in my raised bed garden today, which is one of 3 garden spaces that I'm attempting this year. I might look back on that statement later this year and laugh maniacally because they all failed, or because I gave up on 2 of them. That tends to happen. But my plan right now is to maintain the raised bed garden. So basically I have 8 beds that are just behind me, and I'll walk around and show those a little bit. There's a bee. Hello, my friend. You need to go back to sleep, baby. It's gonna be cold again. Go back to sleep. It's not time yet. Sorry, honeybee distraction. So the front beds here right next to me are 8 foot by 4 foot. And then between each of those, we have this arched cattle panel trellis, which is just T-posts and cattle panel stretched over it. And then we have the other T-post cattle panels in the back that are just straight, which is where I grow my tomatoes. And I guess I've grown a couple other things on them that like to go up, but primarily that's my tomato spot. The back beds are 16 feet, I believe, on the longer beds, and then 12 on the shorter middle beds. The reason that those are shorter is I'm planning on building a little sitting pavilion in between them, so that'll give a little bit more space for the middle. And I'm hoping to have like a nice little sitting area, as well as like that's gonna be where I keep my potted plants and anything that I'm attempting to grow in pots, just so I have everything that I'm watering all in one place. So today I'm only working here in the raised bed garden, but my plan for the next 2 areas is to clean up this absolute disaster that I never show on camera, but we got to clean it up. So this monstrosity was my plan for a perennial garden that got away from me, and basically I wasn't able to maintain keeping it weeded. All of the things that I tried to use for like mulch and keeping weeds down failed miserably, and then eventually I just gave it over to the weeds. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be using a silage tarp that I got to cover this whole area over the summer, and that'll help basically bake the seeds that are underneath it, because I have a lot of weed seeds in here that I don't want spreading to my garden. I don't want to have to fight with them in the same space. This is a nice space that's adjacent to my garden, so I don't want to mess with that. So I'm going to be silage tarping that here soon. Once I have the silage tarp on this area, I'm actually going to keep it there probably for most of the summer to enable all of these seeds to be very taken care of, because we don't want a lot of weed seeds. And then I think that'll probably end up being our fall garden space. And then I'm still kind of deciding where I want to put my secondary summer garden. So we're gonna walk out and figure it out together. So this is just behind my garden here. If you look, my garden's here. I am in the field just next to it. We have this whole field all the way back to kind of the shelter belt area there. And a lot of this is mostly unutilized. We have been mowing it the last season or 2. But I'm thinking either adjacent to the monstrosity over here, which will be its own garden, either right here in the field, or putting it way back here, which would be a little bit more in line with the raised bed garden, which could be nice aesthetically. It's got fairly good privacy, but I also think I want to do a fair amount of corn and sunflowers this year. So part of me wants to just see how much work I can get out of that silage tarp and just like get as much of this field planted as possible and see how it goes. At least with those tall things that you maybe don't necessarily have to keep weeded really well in order to have those plants survive. So there are a few perennials still along this area. My grapevines are doing well. We have some raspberries along there. We're unfortunately going to be sacrificing some second or third year strawberries in this mess because honestly, they're too far gone. It would be entirely too much work to hand weed in order to preserve those few plants. So that makes me sad, but I'm hoping a little bit will maybe survive. We'll see. And then I think I have some blueberry bushes over here. Truth be told, they haven't produced yet, and I need to wait for the leaves to come on because my husband did hit one of them with a lawnmower, and I don't know if the thing that grew back is the blueberry bush or a tree. Because it hasn't leafed yet. So I'm waiting for that to produce some leaves so I can figure out what it is and if I need to cut it down. All right, so I've got some gloves, I've got some tools, I have my sort of regular sort of sharp garden hoe. I have this clawy guy, that's the technical name. And then just some fairly rusty, should probably be cleaned things. But I'm mostly working with dead stuff today, so I'm forgiving myself for not cleaning that first. And basically I'm just gonna be pulling as much as I can and making as much progress as I can until I get hungry and need to go make dinner. Right, so like I mentioned, we do have a ton of work to do all across the garden. I've decided I'm going to go ahead and start with this bed because I very last moment just decided that I'm going to fill this bed with potatoes. It's across from where I've had the potatoes in the past. I think that might help with some crop rotation type of things. It's a bed that hasn't always done super well for me, and I wonder if that might be due to compact soil, which will lead to smaller potatoes but might help decompact the soil a little bit. So I'm going to try that. So I'm going to be clearing this 4-foot by 8-foot bed first. I'll see if I can get anything else done today, but if I get that accomplished today, I'll be happy with it. All right, I ran inside to get a hat and a drink, and when I came back out to get to work, I noticed this little spot here, which is volunteer garlic. I had this as my garlic bed, I think the first year, maybe the first 2 years we were here. And every once in a while we get some pop up that somehow managed to live through whatever. So I can tell that this is volunteer garlic because it looks familiar to me as like an early garlic plant. It smells like garlic. Once it smells like garlic, I feel comfortable tasting it. Tastes like garlic. And so this is what happens when an entire bulb or bulbs get missed, because that's a lot of different garlic plants. So it's going to be too compacted too much, but honestly gives me hope. I had some garlic that I didn't get around to planting, and I think I might try throwing it in the ground because honestly these guys look pretty happy, and worst case scenario I end up with garlic that's smaller than what I would like. So I'm gonna leave this guy alone, but if you grew up garlic last year and you don't know what it looks like when it volunteers, this is it. So I'm gonna get back to work, but I thought that that was a fun little tip for y'all. So we're gonna keep the garlic guy here, and the rest of this will be potatoes, which will work out really well because they both are things that disturb the roots when you're digging them up, and so having them in the same bed won't conflict at all. So the potato bed is completely ready, which is very exciting. I'm going to be planting it next month in March because my mom told me to plant potatoes on St. Patrick's Day because her mom told her to plant potatoes on St. Patrick's Day. So we plant potatoes on St. Patrick's Day. So I'm very happy to have that prepped. The next thing after the potatoes that's a little bit more time urgent is clearing this asparagus bed. There's actually some weeds that cropped up, but there's quite a few like of the dried asparagus tops. They actually have ridiculously deep roots. So you can be a little bit less careful with this than other perennials. So the next thing that's a little bit time sensitive is this asparagus bed. It's going to be cropping up here soon, and I want to be able to differentiate what is asparagus and what is weed, because I definitely don't want to disturb the asparagus roots by pulling it out. I learned that because I accidentally pulled all of my strawberry plants out of this bed last year, because I forgot there were strawberries here, and yeah, that didn't work out. Asparagus thankfully has very deep roots, so I am mostly going to be grabbing things out in the same way, but I'm going to be a little bit more gentle so I'm not pulling out the roots of my asparagus plants that will probably be cropping up here in the next few weeks. And then hopefully as it's springing up, I can keep up with the weeds before they get away from me like these guys did. All right, friends, it is many minutes of parenting later, and I am losing light. I'm using these kitchen shears because they're very clean. They're literally out of my kitchen, unlike my other shears. I am going to be cutting them basically just at the soil point so that any of the roots of the asparagus aren't bothered. And also just to cut away any dead growth that has accumulated and could prevent the very small sprouts from getting sun. So it's not super obvious, but these right here are actually just little roots from the asparagus. I'm only going to be cutting them at the surface so that any asparagus that comes up is not competing with them for daylight. And unlike the weeds that I'm cutting away that have seeds in them, I'm actually not going to do anything at all about getting them out of the bed. Actually, I love that they're in the bed and providing the nutrients back to the garden bed. All right, friends, I'm losing light, but we got so much work done today. We have this asparagus bed completely prepped for the asparagus to come up. And the exciting thing that I have not mentioned up until this point is that this is going to be my first year harvesting asparagus for eating, because I've been letting it grow every year since the first spring we moved here. So look forward to that. I'm definitely going to be making a whole video about asparagus and how much I love it. It takes a long time to seed, so if you are early on your gardening journey, and even if you aren't going to be staying, if there's any place you can put asparagus, do it. Because it grows easy, but it takes a long time to harvest. So it's my hope that in about a month, I'm going to be able to harvest some asparagus directly from my garden and cook it for the very first time. So I'm really looking forward to that. Be sure to subscribe so you can see the moment, because I'm definitely going to be recording it and recording what sorts of wonderful things I make with this food that I started a really long time ago. But it's been really easy to grow, and also asparagus is beautiful when it's fully branched out, so it's kind of ornamental in the years before it's productive. If you're wondering about asparagus and you don't know if you have space for it, throw it somewhere you think that a giant fern would be pretty, and it'll impress you, and maybe eventually you'll get asparagus. But I've been hanging out in my garden all day, and there's a lot of other stuff I need to do. So I'm going to call it on these two beautifully cleaned raised beds. I'll see you really soon, and in the meantime, I hope that you treat yourself to something delicious. Okay, bye. We have this asparagus why can't I say asparagus bed? Asparagus bed, asparagus bed, asparagus bed, asparagus bed, asparagus bed, asparagus bed. Okay, we're good.